Okay, welcome to another episode of KUDEN. So let's just jump right into things. All right. So again, a lot of this is, it's my opinion based on years of observation, experience, being in and out of different martial arts systems, communicating with different people in different arts and whatnot. But uh, what I see is something that points to most people approaching martial arts believing that training will give them certainty, right? They want techniques that guarantee success. They want strategies that always work, right? They want answers that remove the unknown. And I get it, right? I get it. It would be great if life, combat, the universe worked like that, right? But the deeper lesson of the ninja traditions, right, and the warrior traditions, just in general, right, that have been passed down, they were never about certainty. I know it can look like that, but they're not, right? In fact, it was about something very different, right? The ninja, especially, right, trained to live in a world where certainty doesn't exist, right? A world where conditions change constantly, right? Where people are unpredictable, where danger sometimes appears without warning, right? And so the goal of training wasn't, and I don't think anything's changed, right? But the goal of training wasn't to eliminate uncertainty, right? It was to develop the ability to navigate it, right? To observe clearly, to adapt quickly, and to figure out what's needed when and as the situation unfolds, right? And that's what we're going to explore during this episode of KUDEN, right? What it really means to live as a ninja in the modern world, right? So, as always, we'll talk about that and more as soon as we get back.
So, the big question is this: how are self-defense and success-minded people like us, concerned citizens worried about protecting ourselves, our loved ones, and the things we care about from the monsters we know exist in the world? How do we train in a way that gives us the skills, knowledge, and understanding we need without becoming paranoid fighters or killers ourselves, and yet still allows us to be the hero protector the world needs us to be? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Jeffrey Miller, and welcome to KUDEN Radio. Real training for real people in a real world.
All right. James, we still doing okay? Technology's working? Yeah, everything's good? All right. He's nodding to me in the background.
You're good.
Yeah. Good. Awesome. Okay. So welcome back to KUDEN. KUDEN Radio is the full name, right? So just in case you're new, just in case you're in passing, I don't know. Just a quick reminder, right? This is the podcast for you, right? The serious student of the warrior traditions looking to apply the deeper principles of ninjutsu, ninpo, and the warrior mindset to life in the modern world, right? We're not cosplay. We're not, I don't know, Naruto wannabes, whatever. Okay. So today, I want to talk about something that sits at the very heart of the ninja traditions, but that's often, way too often, misunderstood. And that's the difference between training ninja techniques, training ninja skills, and living as a ninja. Okay? Most people encounter ninjutsu through the lens of combat, right? I think we can all recognize that, at least in the West, right? Strange phenomenon between East and West, right? That's the folks in the East, at least when I got involved, right? It was very different, right? It was not the same, okay? But for us here in the West, right, it's through this lens of combat, self-defense, being the super soldier, that kind of thing, right? They think about stealth. They think about weapons, fighting techniques, physical self-defense, those kind of things, right? And those things certainly exist within the art, right? We know that, right? But they were never really the center of it, the core of it, right? Um, of course, you know, they were used, and that's kind of what we gravitated to. But the core is something very different, right? The deeper purpose of the training was something much larger, much bigger. It was about developing the ability to navigate reality when reality becomes unpredictable. Right? In other words, the ninja didn't train for certainty, right? He or she trained for the opposite, right? For uncertainty. Right? So we'll dive into that in a minute. But first, James, who's on? Who's visiting? Who's passing through? Well, you're not going to know who's passing through. They're just going to like drop a name and go, hey, then they could go take a nap after that for all we know. Anyway, who's on?
Looks like Kyle, Alan, Maury, Dave, Kirsty, and Rise.
Oh, okay. I almost said our normal band of ne'er-do-wells, but no, there's some other people in. It's okay. All right, so episode 299. You know what that means? It's got to be like an over-the-hill old guy thing, right? Because I just turned 63. James, I don't know how this is positioned in your head, but it seems like it wasn't all that long ago that we did the 200th episode celebration, right? Except that if we adjust for, 2 extra weeks in, 2 different years, that's 4 opportunities for glitches and shit to throw us off. And I know I don't think that much happened, right? I mean, there might have been a holiday that got in the way. There might have been a death in the family that got in the way. I know we had a technical glitch that got in the way or whatever. But either way, that was 2 years ago, dude. Freaking 2 years ago, right? And next week is our 300th episode. And so I'm actually currently putting all that stuff together. I'll fill you in on some of the things later. But just like with episode 200, I'm going to make some shifts and whatnot that will not just acknowledge the time or the benchmark, so to speak, but also the evolution of the podcast, right? So I've been working on a new logo and updating descriptions and things like that across the podcast directories to bring things more into alignment with what KUDEN is like now. And this will probably be a good time to do what I'm going to be doing probably every couple of episodes. But even the description leads off with how to properly pronounce KUDEN, because you and I have heard everything from that to KUDEN to I don't know, all kinds of crap. Right. So, but anyway, it's KUDEN, right? KUDEN, right? KUDEN. This is the usually oral, but this is the direct transmission from teacher to student part of the training, right? There's Taiden, KUDEN, and Shinden. KUDEN as a podcast kind of covers 2 realms, right? This knowledge side of things, but also Shinden, right? Heart-to-heart transmission, spiritual. When I say spiritual, again, as a reminder to everybody, I don't mean religious. Okay, do whatever you want. It's not about that, but either way, cool. All right. Well, I've been yakking. Anybody else? Slide in?
Oh, nobody said anything.
All right. Well, fair enough. Okay. So, but speaking of next week's 300th episode, like last year we had like a, I don't know, party celebration online. I think the thing lasted 3 hours. Yeah. I'm not going to do a replay. What I do want to do is kind of explain how things have evolved, right? Just in case folks didn't notice. But also, if you're a regular, you will see coming out in the if you're on the newsletter or the email list, you'll be getting an email. We'll post it in the comment sections under this episode. Well, anything I post for the upcoming 300 kind of thing. But I have a question that I'm going to have folks answer, and then based on what comes in, pick a couple of those, and if people record them, then we'll play them. If they just type them out, then we'll read them. But that's just one section of things. But it'll be a fun time. And if you want to have something that you can have a little toast with along the way, that's fine, right? Whether it's your Diet Pepsi, Mountain Dew, whatever, something harder, something softer, glass water, who knows, right? That'd be cool too. And if not, no worries, no harm, no foul. All right. That being said, let me jump back into things, right? So again, one of the biggest misunderstandings people bring into training is the belief that martial arts training, not just ninjutsu, right, but any form, will give them guarantees. Okay. That life doesn't have any guarantees, right? I mean, unless one of you were born and shortly thereafter, right, your warranty kind of followed you out into the world. It's kind of like the owner's manual for the human body. I don't think mom would have appreciated that, but either way, right? There are no guarantees. There's no warranties. There's no guarantee any one of us is waking up alive tomorrow. Nothing like that, right? But from this perspective, right, this search for guarantees, right? I've seen this from two very different types of students over the years. Okay, are there only two? No, of course not. There's as many as there are, rivers and whatever. Okay, but we'll just take a look at it from two extremes. Okay, the first is what I might call the naturally dominant personality. Okay, they want powerful techniques that guarantee control. I get it, right? They are technique focused. They are winning focused. There's a lot more that goes into it, but they want to know that if someone attacks them, that they will win, right? They want to know that they're training in the best system or systems, right? Often they'll cross-train across systems to leave no stone unturned, right? I think you get the idea, right? So the second type is the person who feels vulnerable. They lack confidence. They've seen the news. They've seen, who knows, right? If they're younger, they remember seeing fights in school. They've seen people being attacked. They've heard the news stories. They see the shit that's going on in the world, right? Often they come at this with a just enough kind of mentality, but either way, they come to training hoping that this will give them what they need to guarantee safety, right? They want reassurance, right? Where the dominant personality wants reassurance that they're learning the best system, the most powerful techniques, that kind of thing, right? This person wants reassurance that if something happens, they'll always know what to do. Okay. But this person typically, right? Again, there's varying degrees, right? But for the most part, they don't want to be a fighter. They're not looking to win trophies or belts or whatever. They don't want to be a victim. Okay. And both make perfect sense. Okay. to me anyway, both make perfect sense. One wants proof through winning, through signs of ability, right? Belts, trophies, whatever, right? Or thoroughness, right? The system that they're in, right? This is covering XYZ, PDQ, whatever, right? The other one wants to feel more safe and confident, and excuse me, and they're hoping that martial arts will give them that thing, right? Either way, both are searching for the same thing, certainty. Okay. But what I've found, and a lot of my peers and fellow students and teachers have talked about this over the years as well. If we train long enough and we train deeply enough, we realize that the warrior traditions actually work to remove that illusion very quickly, right? Because the truth is this: training does not give you guarantees. Right? It improves your probabilities, right? It increases your probability of winning. It gives you advantages in certain areas, given that you've trained and developed skills and taken things into account so that you can handle those situations, right? There's no guarantees. Right? This isn't just a martial arts thing, right? This guarantee thing. Just talking with a friend about this the other day. As a matter of fact, it was one of my students, and she's self-employed as well. And a lot of people, they see this as like this huge, huge risk, right? Not doing that, right? I need guarantees, whatever. And I get it, right? But we were kind of chuckling at things like, just in the past couple of years, we've seen 20, 30, 50, 100-year-old companies tank, right? And then like everybody's like freaking out, right? They want laws passed. How could a company just go out of business? Or fucking ran out of money, right? Who knows? Bad tactical decisions. A lot of places went out of business because they were making shit that like nobody buys anymore. Okay, everybody's more than willing to discuss how, well, we don't do things like that anymore, right? We don't use that stuff over there anymore, right? Because technology is this, or this thing has changed, or people see things differently. Okay. But there's a whole bunch of people that have their livelihoods tied to those things that we don't use anymore. And some people that I know, it's happened to them, right? So, the other side to that, from my perspective, is if I take that route, and I'm not telling anybody that they have to choose anything, right? Do you, right? But one of my reasons for not getting a comfortable job is I am then at the whim of the decisions and the steering of people in positions that I'm not at, right? I have no say over any of those things, right? On my own, there's high points, there's low points, but you know what? I'm always steering. So I can make adjustments, right? And what I told my student is that if this plane is going down in flames, I'll be steering because I'll be making decisions and trying to pull that damn thing up the whole time. But if I'm working for somebody else and it's going under, I may not know that there's a problem until, I don't know about other states or provinces or any places else, or any other places in the world. But here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, there's a law that, and again, I don't know if it's federal. I just know it from the state perspective, where a company has to give its employees 60 days notice that they'll be closing their doors. Right. So that's 60 days so the employee can start looking for a new job and all that kind of stuff, right? You can't just close your doors no matter how bad things are, right? And I know it's an attempt to keep the employees safe. But shit happens, right? And it's this reality that ninjutsu is really all about. Okay. All right. Again, we'll dive into more of this here in just a minute. But before we do that, let me ask you for a small favor. If you're finding value in this or any of these discussions, right, through KUDEN, right? If this episode or the podcast itself gives you something to think about when it comes to not only your training, but your personal development as a warrior in today's world, right? Please take a moment, like, subscribe, share the episode, leave a comment, wherever you're listening, right? Or if you're watching, right? I know these simple actions may seem small, but they actually tell the platform algorithms, the technology I was just talking about, right? That this content is useful, right? And when you do that, right, when that happens, the platform begins showing the episode or these episodes, right, to more people who are interested in these ideas and in this level of training, right? These are people who may also be searching for a deeper understanding of the warrior traditions. Okay. So when you like, when you share, when you comment, or when you leave a review, you're not just supporting the show, right? You're helping these lessons reach others who can absolutely benefit from them as well. Okay. And I truly appreciate that. Right. Okay. Now that we took care of that, let's dive into this much deeper. Okay. Here's something that may sound odd, right? But reality is not clean. It's not uber structured, right? It's not symmetrical. You know what I mean by that, right? It's not balanced. Right. Reality is asymmetrical. Okay. Things don't unfold neatly. People behave unpredictably. I know this is like a surprise to everyone, right? Okay. Situations are not static. They change, they evolve. Sometimes they devolve, right? So the ninja mindset, right? Learn to operate in the middle ground between two extremes. Okay. Those two extremes are certainty and paranoia. Okay. Certainty blinds you. Okay. We see this in the martial arts all the time. Okay. As soon as somebody reaches a certain level of skill, they reach a certain belt level, they reach a certain proficiency with a kata or a technique or a weapon. Okay. What ends up happening is they stop learning. Okay. They stop paying attention. Right. They stop all this when they're sure of themselves. Again, when they know the kata, that kind of thing. Right. As a matter of fact, I remember back in when did I take my Godan test? 2000. Where were you in 2000? So it was in Atlanta, Georgia, and my teacher at the time, Shoshi Bud Malmstrom, he and his wife had hosted this yearly Taikai. And he told me before I came in that I'd be testing for my Yondan or my Godan, my fifth Dan. And he was tired of me postponing it. I had held it off for a long time. Okay. I mean, at that point, I had been training started in late 80, early 81. So give or take 20 years. Is that right? 80. Yeah. 20 years. Okay. And wasn't in a hurry. But the rules were you had to have your Yondan certificate, your fourth Dan certificate, and you had to have your Bujinkan membership card. And so I showed up early. I showed up for the Friday evening festivities the night before. It was a big taiko drumming band playing. They arranged for this big soiree, right? And so he comes up and we're, just kind of chatting. Drumming's cool, all this nice touch, whatever. And he said, you brought your stuff, right? You're testing. And I went, darn the luck. I forgot it at home. And he looked at me and he said, darn the luck. I'm your paperwork. Anyway, that's not the story. The story is testing for KUDEN was to take place Saturday evening after training finished, but before dinner. So, training all day Saturday, and time's getting there, and then we know what time those of us who are testing candidates are supposed to meet at this one particular room in the hotel where this thing is going to be taking place. And everybody's cleared out, and I'm kind of there with my wife and a couple of students. And can't say that I was not concerned about not getting bashed in the head, which, by the way, was not made any more helpful when those of us who were supposed to be testing show up, doors closed, and somebody's outside. One of the security guys is outside, and he said, Hatsumi Sensei had a message for everybody. Just pass this around, read it, and just pass it on to the next person, right? So it's a little motivation for you. And when I got it and I opened it up, there was nothing written on it. There was a face with the eyes X'd out and a big ass lump on the head, right? And that was it, right? So just ramp things up a little bit more. Anyway, so but before I went, one of the tent dons had approached me, and he said, "Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. I've watched your training. You're fine. You'll be fine." And I said, "Well, you want to take the test for me?" And he goes, "No, you'll do much better than any of the tent dons would do, or most of the tent dons would do." And that kind of threw me off, right? What the hell are you talking about? Like they've already passed the test. They have that skill. And he goes, "Don't be so sure. Okay. You're going to be switched on." Okay. The reason I said that most of the 10th dons, because we didn't have 15 dons at the time, we didn't have Daichians. That was the highest level. He said the reason why most of them are going to fail the test is because of two things. One, after they got the 5th dan, after they got promoted, they stopped working on the things necessary to pass the test. The test is just a gateway, right? You're supposed to keep refining that skill because it gets deeper and deeper and deeper as you go. Chances are most of them didn't. And two, most of them are resting on their rank, and the biggest fear that's going to be going through their head that's going to prevent them from passing the test is, what happens if I fail? So yeah, most of them would shit a brick if they were told they had to retake the test. Okay? And that's what we're talking about, by people getting a certain rank, a certain level of proficiency, skill, whatever, and they stop. Okay. As a matter of fact, back in the day, we used to call the KUDEN test the go down test, because after people got promoted to that, the training went to shit. Okay. So the certainty thing, there's a trap that comes with it, right? But then on the other side of the scale, right, there's paranoia, right? Paranoia overwhelms you. Okay. This is the student who is worried about and watching for anything. They're watching for everything, which is impossible, right? But they're afraid that anything can or will happen, no matter what, right? Because they don't understand the conditions that exist that allow for certain things to happen and other things to not, right? So they're creating just a butt ton of cognitive overload, where one, pride's going to go before the fall, maybe, For the other one, they're just stacking cognitive load on top of cognitive load, right? Just giving their mind more and more and more shit to process, and eventually it just they won't see the thing that's coming. Neither of these people will see the thing that's coming, but for two different reasons. Okay, so you got certainty, you got paranoia, right? But paranoia, and another thing that paranoia can be called is possibility, right? Anything's possible. Since anything's possible, yeah, okay. But how about if we start with what's probable? Okay, what's probable, right? So certainty steps up, and we just assume that because we've got the rank, we got the years in training, I got all this stuff, right? Or I believe that it guarantees my win. Um, I'm going to underestimate the other person. Probably not the best place to be, right? Paranoia is wrapped around this belief that anything is possible. And while that is true to an extent, not everything is possible in any given moment, right? So instead of worrying about what's possible, like what if you're attacked by a guy who's a master of white crane kung fu and he's going to do this, this pecking strike kind of. How about if we worry about the guy's going to throw a jab, jab, right cross or an uppercut, or stab you in the gut 15 times before you stop freezing up. Okay. So, and that's the thing, right? Let's start with probabilities. Anybody that trains with me and is going through the curriculum, you know that that's what Mod 1's about. Okay. Statistically proven most common attacks. Let's get those out of the way. Let's get those handled. And then we can work on what if it's this kind of attacker? What if it's this kind of attacker? What if, right? Conditions, environment, those kind of things, right? But until we can handle, the straight punch, the hook punch, the single hand or double handed grabbing kind of thing, or a kick coming at you, or a bear hug, or a rear choke, or these are all statistically proven to be the most common things of all the assaults that happen, at least here in the U.S., right, on a daily basis. Those things make up 95 to 98% of them. Okay, so that's why we start there. Okay, but if we focus on probabilities, right? Probabilities allow you to observe things much more clearly, right? You gather information, you assess conditions, you update your understanding as the situation unfolds, as he does certain things, right? You don't lock on, you don't make snap judgments about, well, he's standing this way, so he must be this kind of martial artist, or this kind of fighter, so obviously he's going to do. Okay. Next thing you know, a knife comes out or a gun comes out and everything changes. Right. But again, just like I said before, that mindset applies not just to combat, not just to self-defense, right? It applies in every aspect of our lives. Okay. Living as a ninja means developing certain habits of mind, not just body. Right? Certain mental habits. Okay. It's learning to observe. It's learning to notice and recognize patterns. Right? You start paying attention to subtle changes in people and environments. Right? It's becoming comfortable operating without all the information. Right? One of my teachers used to say, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Because that's life. Okay. Where a lot of people walk around like, something happens and they go, God damn it. If it's not one thing, it's another. Yeah. Get used to it. If it's not one thing, it's another. Okay. This training is about developing a problem-solving mind. And the more acutely aware we are of things, the more we start putting things in place that handle things farther away. But that doesn't mean that things don't slip through. Hell, on the mandala, right? On the Taizokai mandala, in the Hall of the Light Kings, right? a lot of people in the art are familiar with this Fudo Myo character, right? Flames, sword, rope, bangs, whatever, right? Fudo is actually the guardian of thresholds, right? Fudo, at one level, represents that drawing a line or putting up gates, right, in my life, figurative, not necessarily literal, right? So I'm not bitching and complaining because people are just stomping through my life, making demands of me, screwing things up or whatever. Well, I left the damn gates open, right? I didn't establish clear guidelines as to like who's allowed in, right? Ask permission. No, you're not allowed to just walk in my damn house. Whatever, right? So, but so Fudo is this guardian of thresholds, right? Here's the boundaries, right? The next character over is this character called Gozanze Myo, right? Again, flames, except this guy has three eyes, 6 arms, a weapon in each freaking hand, all kinds of shit, right? So Gozanze is the destroyer of evil. Okay. Now, not getting all spiritual on you. These are all symbolic of aspects of our lives, things taken care of. Okay. So Fudo is there to keep most bad shit out. But even in enlightened teachings, there's a recognition that shit gets through, right? You're busy dealing with one thing, something else slips by. Best of intentions, right? You didn't know that you should have prepared for that thing over there. Or the jackwagon that's trying to screw you over is just more cunning. They put a little bit of planning into things, whatever, right? Or they deceived you, right? They let off with love or friendship or whatever. This is not about being paranoid, right? This is just life, right? So if Fudo is the guardian of the threshold, Gozanze is there to take care of anything that gets through. Gozanze's something else happened. Okay. So anyway, this is it's life, right? James, did you have something? I heard a little sound. Anything? No. Want to make sure.
I'm not sure what that was. The screen, like, kind of flashed, but I mean, you're still on. You're still live.
Yeah, I see it, but that was weird. It was almost like somebody signed in and signed back out again.
Yeah,
Get it, James. See, James is my Fudo, and he also subtly takes care of Gozanze stuff. What most people don't know is that every once in a while, we get some jackwagon that tries to hijack the chat feed and all kinds of stuff from wherever they are. And there's a reason that I have a producer for the show because, yeah. Right, James?
right.
Sometimes.
Gotta keep Alan in check.
Gotta keep Alan in check. I agree, and I appreciate it very much. Right? He's just, anyway. All right. So, again, things change, right? And that's the point, right? Life is life, right? Wanting it to be anything that it other than it is wanting baby magic, and that's not the mature way of living, and it's certainly not the ninja way of doing things. Okay, so, but again, you become comfortable operating without complete information. You become comfortable recognizing that you have to make subtle adjustments, right? That's part of the skill set. Okay. And that way, when something unexpected happens, your mind just naturally shifts into assessment mode rather than panic, rather than anger management, rather than pissed off, rather than, anytime those kind of things happen, it's just a sign that there's an unspoken expectation that either shit should always be perfect or somehow the individual is, they're better than everybody else on the planet, and so life should just go perfect for them. Okay? It's still the child inside that is steering, right? That that child that when it was a child, right, said, "When I grow up, I'm gonna do whatever I want. When I grow up, that's never gonna happen to me. When I grow up, I'm gonna have this, right? And never gonna have any of the bad stuff." Well, if those beliefs are still going on, then the 6-year-old or the 12-year-old or whatever is still fucking driving. Okay. Now, this is not me standing on a pedestal, like, I'm above all this. I've experienced this personally many times myself. Okay. Um, just it's part of the process, right? You bounce into the world, or you bounce off the world, or the world bangs into you, or whatever. Okay. Um, and now, right, people sometimes ask why situations that cause others to panic tend to just put my mind into problem solving mode, right? That I'm not panicking. And the answer is simple. Getting there is not so simple, but the answer is simple, right? It isn't that I always know what to do, because often I don't, right? But training has taught me something else. It's taught me how to figure out what is needed when and as whatever the situation problem is, right? When it or as it's unfolding, right? I'm not jumping to conclusions, those kind of things, right? So now there may be an initial visceral reaction, right? There may be, right? The adrenals kick in. There may be some panic. There may be some overwhelm, whatever, right? That's normal, right? That's physiology, right? It's the human system's early warning system that says, "Hey, shit, something needs to be paid attention to." Okay. Hatsumi Sensei used to distinguish between uh, like normal nerves and Budo nerves. Okay. And Budo nerves are what kick in if we can allow the uh, the adrenals to normalize the system, right? Get into that different state. Okay. The problem is that people fear, they avoid the panic thing, or they panic even more when it happens or whatever. But these things are normal. Okay. But once that stabilizes, then the mind starts asking questions that allow for solutions to happen. And in Mikyo, the acknowledged understanding is that answers don't produce enlightenment. Questions do. And not just questions, clear, directed questions, right? Correct questions. Because answers are everywhere. Okay. But the mind starts asking things like, what is happening? Okay. What matters right now? Okay. What options exist? Okay. Panic asks, why is this happening? Right. Starts throwing the blame game around. Right. All kinds of shit. Right. Strategy asks, what's next? Right. What are my options? Those kind of things. Okay. All right. Probably a good time to take a quick question break. James, any questions or comments come in at this point? Anybody else sign in, say hey?
I'm gonna go. Chris Cowan said good evening.
Hey, Chris. Good to hear from you. I can't see you at the moment, so.
The at Rise over on YouTube is apparently Terrence.
Oh, all right.
Thanks.
I think he has so many names. He's probably like some NSA operative or whatever that just like
Mhm.
sometimes he goes into lurking mode, sometimes he goes into like I got a different name mode. Guess who I am? Yeah. So anyway,
And
he's really
United
trying to
States.
live like a ninja. Who else is on?
uh, United States Nympho Academy said konnichiwa.
Oh, cool. Konnichiwa. Well, konbanwa for me, but either way, this is also an example of breaking the bonds of time and space, right? Talking to people across time zones, right? That's one of the Kuji levels for anybody that didn't catch that ninja joke. Anyway, is that it? Is that what we got?
That's it.
Okay. All right. So let's switch gears just a little bit here. Everything's still tied together. Okay. But students sometimes notice that my training includes a wide range of skills. And this isn't just a ninjutsu thing, because we'll talk about that in a minute, right? Because just because ninjutsu has or had it as a part doesn't mean that everybody's training in them, right? Um, but our curriculum still holds on to, right? Stealth, ukemi, de-escalation skills and tactics, movement, perception, those kind of things, right? A lot of instructors have removed many of these skills because they believe they belong to another time, right? They belong to history. Okay. Others might keep them purely out of a sense of tradition, right? But never explain how they apply in the modern world. Like, in class, we get it all the time, right? Sensei, why do I have to learn rolling? Because it's your primary escape from locks and holds, or I don't know, tripping on a raised piece of sidewalk that you weren't paying attention to, and your face is heading toward the ground. Okay. Okay, so I learned rolling, but like, why do I have to learn the break falls? Okay, isn't that the same thing? No, rolling is required when there's lateral traversing, right? You're being thrown, your body's being extended, whatever, right? Who knows? You could be being chased, right? And next thing you know, you're coming up on this chest high wall or something in the way, right? I don't know, little kid runs out or whatever, right? Rolling allows me to go over that thing, roll and recover, and keep on going. Because physiologically, from a physics perspective, the human body covers space, covers the ground, right? Faster by rolling than it does by walking or running. Because your body's in constant contact with the ground, just like a tire, right, on a bike or a car, right? As opposed to one and then another and then another and right as your feet touch down. Okay, and it allows for me to transition from one state to another with a flow, right? But rolling doesn't account for being dropped vertically to the ground. Okay, legs, one or both legs being swept out from under you, or right in the middle of a throw, person steps out from underneath or whatever, right? Um, we have a throw like that. What is it? Takiotosh, waterfall drop. Get somebody up into a throw and then walk out from underneath, so they stiffen up to try to catch themselves as they're dropping, and then you can intercept them while they're in survival mode, right? So, but break falls are for where the body's being dropped to the ground, right? Most people miss the fact that they're different because they see break falls transition into a roll, right? It's just the way I'm getting to the ground is different. No. The dynamic that creates your relationship with the ground is what's different. Okay. Why leaping? Well, sometimes you can't roll over that space. There's broken glass. There's freaking, boards with nails sticking out of it. There's a gap. Okay. Whatever. I need to traverse this ground. Can't drop, can't roll, can't walk. So I need to clear that space quickly, right? So again, different things, right? Why weapons? Why, right? Why stealth, right? Most people look at stealth from the perspective of, well, you don't need that unless you're going to be breaking into people's houses or whatever. Really? Au contraire, my frere. Right? How about if too many people break into your freaking house and or your apartment or whatever, and engagement is riskier than using stealth to get the hell out. Okay, so I think the problem isn't the skills. I think the problem is the framing of the skills. Okay, like just in a Ninja Hachimon, looking at Ninja no Uge, right? Often there's things in there like the entertainment arts and whatnot, because it's disguised impersonation. There's deception, manipulation, influence, those kind of things, right? Well, those are all evil. I would never learn anything like that. Okay, so that tells me you would never teach your child about Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy. You don't read to them nursery rhymes or fairy tales or whatever that have deeply embedded moral stories or things like that. Okay, but right, I manipulate my students all the time. And sometimes I even deceive. Right, I'll show them a broken technique to see if they're paying attention and they can spot where something's not right. Okay? Hatsumi Sensei a long time ago just flat out told us, I will lie to you. I had several peers that quit the art when he said that. One of them very specifically said, I'm paying to learn these lessons. I don't need anybody playing fucking mind games with me. It didn't change anything for him. But my thing was, well, how else would he know if we're actually like paying attention, researching things, validating information, right? Learning ninja mindset, those kind of skills, or if we're just being blind or faith-driven disciples. Because part of the art is teaching you to think clearly, independently, on your own. Okay? Not being spoon-fed shit. Okay? Either way, right? I think you can see at this point, if you're one of my students, you definitely know, right? My approach is a little different, right? My goal is to teach from the Jonin perspective, not just the Geinin level. High man position, right? Not just the field operative position. Okay. Many of the skills practiced historically were used by Genin, right? On specific missions, whatever, right? But the principles behind those skills belong to the Jonin level. Okay. Stealth isn't about sneaking into castles. It's about knowing when avoiding detection is safer than confrontation and getting your ass out of there without being detected. Right? Ukemi isn't just a safety exercise. Prepares you for the reality that you may not avoid every shove, every fall, every moment of imbalance. Right? He might just snatch your ass up and you're in the middle of a throw or a wrist lock or whatever. Okay? Everybody wants to learn the techniques as though we've got these secrets and they'll never be done to us. It doesn't work that way. Every technique is beatable. Anybody that ever tells you differently, run, don't walk, run from them. Okay? Because it's bullshit. Okay? So, de-escalation, right? We teach de-escalation, which is non-physical, right? It's that last ditch effort, right? We actually teach two different phases, right? Distraction techniques and dissuasion. They're both verbal, but right, they exist in the curriculum because not every threat should become a physical fight. Right? Everybody's, and I get it, right? get training the physical stuff a lot because those skills take the longest to develop. Coordination, timing against different size bodies, all that kind of stuff, right? But if that's all we do, then we're training for the place where nobody should ever want to go. And then we're not training to prevent it. We're not training awareness and observation, those kind of things, right? So each skill preserves options if we can see them, right? And preserving options is the essence of the art. Not collapsing to style, not collapsing to preference, not collapsing to this is my go-to move or my go-to technique, those kind of things, right? And so when I talk about the Jonin perspective, right, some people assume I'm simply choosing one level of the art over another. Like everybody else is doing Ginin stuff, so you got to be the different guy. No, right? That's not really what's happening. The reason I emphasize Jonin thinking is because that's how we were taught. Hatsumi Sensei was training us to become the heads of our own networks, to be Jonin, right? To be warrior philosophers, to think, act, and live on a very, very different level. Okay. Early on, many of us misunderstood that structure. Okay. We assumed that based on the ninja clan structure, right? Jonin, Chunin, Geinin, right? That Hatsumi Sensei was the Jonin, right? He was the head of the organization. He was the head of the clan, so to speak, whatever, right? And then the instructors and the seniors, well, they were the Chunin, right? They were the ones managing everybody else, right? And then the students were the Geinin. But that interpretation treats those roles like belt ranks. And historically, that's not where they were. Okay? Those levels described responsibilities within a network. Right? Geinin carried out operations. Chunin coordinated them. They were like management. And Jonin were responsible for strategy and leadership and who the Ryuha would align itself with, right? That kind of thing, right? So in other words, the training was never meant to produce followers. It was meant to produce people capable of leading themselves, right? Any questions or comments at this point, James?
No, I haven't seen anything come in.
Okay. So this also connects to the classical idea of Musha Shugyo. Right? Musha Shugyo means the warrior's quest. And there's a couple of different ways to look at this thing. Often it's, the swordsman who leaves the dojo and wanders the countryside and has experiences, right, to understand how those lessons apply to different areas and realms and whatnot, should one survive long enough, right? But the way I was introduced to and taught about the Musha Shugyo, this warrior's quest, wasn't the way most people think, right? It wasn't about this wandering from place to place, testing one's skills, right? The deeper lesson was something else, right? The way it was presented to me was in that the warrior leaves the comfort of certainty, right? He or she steps into unfamiliar territory where predictable answers no longer exist. Okay. This is Stephen Hayes going to Japan, assuming that rent and everything else, we're not even talking about martial arts training yet, assuming that rent and the monetary system and all this kind of stuff worked the same way it did here in the States. And what he thought was a year comfortably of finances to get him through was shot in less than 3 months. Okay. Different culture, different language that he knew, kind of. Very, very different, right? This was Takamatsu Sensei going to China, right? There's lots of references to this. Even Hatsumi Sensei, with all of his black belts and Menkyo Kaiden in different types of martial arts, right? Dropping it all and just diving headfirst into training with Takamatsu and just getting his ass torn up, right? Here's this cocky guy that has all of these abilities that aren't worth a shit against this guy who's teaching him real Budo and not this tough guy stuff. Not that he didn't have skills. Absolutely had skills. He just found somebody and decided to train with him that just wrecked it all. Okay. That's very unstabling. And that's the point. Okay. The point is letting go of the guardrails, letting go of the handrails, and stepping into unfamiliar territory where predictable answers, comfort, right, those kind of things no longer exist, right? We're literally destabilized, okay? And that's the point. That's the point, because in that process, right, the warrior learns to observe, to adapt, and to regain equilibrium. Okay? Over time, he begins to see patterns, even in chaos, right? And confidence emerges. This is the same process that every one of us has gone through this at least once in our life. It was called birth. The infant doesn't know language, has no relative understanding or connection to anything in the world. Everything is just light, shape, sounds, noise, experiences, or whatever. And we literally had to make sense out of things that now we walk around the world in our egocentric sense of sureness, right? Telling you, oh, that's just common sense. Everybody knows that. Not true. Okay. It was a really good movie a bunch of years ago that came out. Antonio Banderas was in this. He played this Persian prince who was an asshole. His dad kicked him out of the kingdom, sent him off to train in the Norse countries with the Vikings and those guys, right? Just living in freaking cold and freezing, and they just picked on him like he didn't know the language. The king in this Norse kind of thing, right, knew his dad, right, this other king, whatever his title was, right, and agreed to take this snot-nosed little bastard who was going through the wealth, getting drunk, sleeping around, all kinds of stuff, and was in no way, no shape or form any kind of quality to be able to take over when dad died. Dad figures, look, he's either going to toughen up or he's going to die in the process. Either way, my problem is solved. So he sends him on the whole movie, right? And the whole movie is about, from the very beginning, not understanding the language, sitting around the fire, that kind of stuff. And he goes from frustration to actually starting to pay attention and starting to recognize things, and starts to understand the language, starts to understand the customs, and ends up becoming a respected warrior within their ranks. So when he goes back, it's a very different person. That whole movie is about the Musha Shugyo. I highly recommend it, right? Just because there's more to it than just this neat storyline. The storyline is about, unwillingly, this guy becomes a warrior in spite of himself. Okay, the Musha Shugyo typically is taken on knowingly. And we can still do it in our world. We just have to step out of the comfort zones that we've surrounded ourselves with as though they were castle walls, right? Shake up the training a bit, those kind of things, right? So again, the warrior leaves the comfort of certainty, right? Steps into unfamiliar territory, that kind of stuff, right? And over time, right, the same kind of confidence and sureness grows out of that. Okay, that confidence, right? But not confidence, not the confidence of believing that you always know the answer, right? But the confidence, and this is something that I tell people all the time, right? Um, I think one of my strongest qualities is not knowing everything about this art, knowing everything about conflict. No, it's not about those things. It's knowing that I have a skill set that when shit goes sideways, I'll figure it out. Okay. And that's what arises out of this Mushishugyo, right? The confidence that you can work things out when the path becomes unclear, when things are unpredictable, when things are uncertain, right? When you're not sure if you can make it work out. I have students work on that all the time. As a matter of fact, I have one going to Japan with me this trip coming up in May, and it didn't take him long to flip because he's going through one of the other coaching programs too. But I just think it's in his nature. We just need to uncover it, right? Because culture can brain fuck you more than anybody else that you think is your enemy, right? It's this mass hypnosis of mediocrity. But anyway, he, like many people, said, well, money, time, whatever, And I said, what's a great motivator? Just decide you're going. And then now you're forced to figure it out. And sure enough, right, it's one of the reasons why we have a non-refundable deposit. Okay. As long as people think they have an out, or as long as they're comfortable, right? Most people do not have the impetus in their lives, not the desire. They don't have the impetus, right? The input, right? The conditions that our historical past masters and those families had way back on, in the Iga and Koga regions and things like that. Didn't have it. And that is, life was already uncomfortable for them. They lived in a domineering, overtly controlling society, that kind of thing, right? They had to start a fire to boil water, to cook meals, to stay warm, that kind of thing. There were all these skills, right, that people had to have. Collect food, forage, hunt. Everybody had to do it. And today, everybody's comfortable. That's why this stuff is a choice. When it's no longer a choice, right? When you have to solve things, then that's when you'll have to learn how to figure it out. But because we have the safety of society, social construct, culture, all that kind of stuff, it's easy to play the blame game. It's easy to fill out some forms and get money and all those kind of things. I'm not saying they're wrong, just saying it's easier. And those easy things don't produce warriors. They produce people that do warrior training and learn warrior stuff. But there's a difference between learning things and becoming something. Very different. Okay. So this is where the distinction between ninjutsu and ninpo becomes important, right? Ninjutsu refers to methods and techniques. Ninpo refers to the deeper way of living and thinking that emerges from the principles, from studying the principles behind those techniques. and seeing how they're not just about, deceiving somebody, getting somebody to catch the rope of a Kyoketsu shoge, hook, dagger, rope kind of thing, right? And then tying him up. It's how do I get somebody? How do I get the attacker, right, to make this move that is to my advantage and not in his best interest, but when he does it, he absolutely believes that he has me. Okay? How do I maintain subtle control throughout areas of my life that most people don't think of as conflict, right? Because they're not ducking punches, but they're having to deal with character attacks and reputational things and just constant stressors and demands for time, effort, energy, money, those kind of things, right? The principles are the same. What they look like are different. Okay? Physical self-defense is one application of that mindset. Okay? Important. Absolutely important when needed, but not the center of the art. Okay? The center of the art is how the practitioner moves through life. Observing, adapting, thinking clearly under pressure, right? Thinking more clearly about things. Another good book I'm going to reference, and hopefully, even if it's not in print, should be able to find it in these used places or whatever. It's written by Jack Hoban a long time ago. It's called Ninpo, Living and Thinking as a Warrior. There's a whole section in there, whole chapter on money, finances, right? No, you don't have to be an accountant. No, you don't have to invest or whatever. But he poses like a really interesting question that kind of sets up a dilemma. I've got this much money and I want to do good in the world. Which one does better? Which one does more good? Donating it to a good cause or taking a vacation? I'm not ruining the book, but it's quite the eye-opener. The number of people that get helped directly in one over the other and how that happens, that's clarity. That changes everything. Okay? And it's not making a case for doing one thing over doing another. It does make a really good case about which one seems easier, but which one actually creates a win-win-win situation. And you're not just feeling good because you donated something, but you actually got something as a kind of an energy recharge as well. Okay? Still not going to tell you how it all works out, right? I'm alluding to it, but we have to remember that a lot of us take a lot of things for granted that we were taught by other people, and we hold beliefs about how certain things get done or how you respond to certain things. Okay. And handling money is one of those things. But the truth is most of us weren't taught how to handle money or finances or whatever by somebody who had any or a significant amount where it made a difference. And so we were the recipient of lessons and belief systems that had to do with what? The blame game, accusatory things, whatever. Okay? So the center of the art is how the practitioner moves through life. Okay? Living, thinking, observing, adapting, right? Thinking clearly under pressure. Okay? So living as a ninja doesn't mean constantly prepared for combat. Doesn't mean constantly preparing for combat. Okay? It means learning how to move through an unpredictable world with awareness and the ability to adapt as adaptation is necessary. Because let's face it, reality rarely, if ever, gives us guarantees. Yeah? The goal of training is not to eliminate uncertainty. The goal of training is to develop the kind of mind that can navigate it. Right? The ninja doesn't train for certainty. The ninja trains for reality. All right. Before we wrap everything up, James, what do you have? Questions, comments, complaints? Sensei, you're full of shit as usual. What do we got? Uh-oh, he's filtering.
I'm just checking. Some of them chat among themselves. So.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So they just show up so they can like chat with each other, not really listening to the lessons.
Well,
now I feel all used. I'm paying for a service to simulcast the podcast so people can just do what they do and all the other times, except that, I don't have his number. So like when he signs into KUDEN, like I'll chat with him then. Okay. Well, thanks.
Dave and Alan were just agreeing that 13th Warrior is a great movie.
Thanks. Now I feel validated. Awesome. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. No, it is. I don't recommend many, and when I do recommend movies, they're usually not for the same reasons that most people, oh, it was a good movie. Like when I recommended The Matrix, it was like, dude, that's freaking highest levels of Ninpo and Mikyo, two important points within the training, all wrapped up in an entertaining science fiction story. So anyway, same thing with The Last Samurai. Right? That was an awesome primer to warrior mindset over domination mindset, right? Or who holds the power, kind of thing. Yeah. Anyway, anything else?
No.
Okay, so a couple of things. Remember that next episode is episode 300. So if you are on the email list, if not, why the hell not? But if you are, I'll be sending out an email with a question about, well, something related to you and KUDEN, or you and training in general. And again, depending on the number that come in, right, a handful maybe we'll read or go through during next week's episode. And I've got quite a few things scheduled. So one of the things will happen is just like last time, right? We'll have a countdown to the episode, but each of these will give me an opportunity to put things out. So when one goes out, there'll be an invitation, right? So if you're not on the email list, no harm, no foul. You can leave a comment with the answer, with your answer. Okay. But we'll have some cool things going on. James, did you think we'd hit 300? I didn't give it any thought, but 300 now seems like holy shit. But what I definitely will be talking about is while it's a significant benchmark, it's just another step. Okay. I'll be teaching on and covering several Japanese sayings, quotes, and things like that have to do with this kind of stage, right? This point, as well as a couple of other reference points that I have. So anyway, it'll be cool, right? I think. And if You don't think so? And you can always like click off to something else, right? There's plenty of cat and dog videos waiting over on YouTube. Right. So anyway, also, if this topic resonated with you, we'll be continuing the discussion in this week's Where's Whiteboard Wednesday session, obviously on Wednesday. Okay. So in this episode, we talked about living as a ninja and developing the ability to navigate uncertainty through observation and probability thinking. Right. During Whiteboard Wednesday, we'll begin exploring how information gathering actually works in real situations, right? And how it's already embedded in techniques, in strategies, right? It's right there. It's just a different level within the kata and those kind of things, right? So more specifically, though, we'll be focusing on the sensory side of awareness, right? Most people rely almost entirely on sight, but in the warrior traditions, okay, information comes through all the senses, okay? And so this week, we'll start looking at one of the most overlooked senses in martial training, okay? And that's the tactile sense, the sense of touch, okay? And so, yeah, that'll be cool. And then, of course, that's going to lead to the physical training during Friday's masterclass, right? So if you want to continue exploring these ideas, make sure you join us for those. And if you're listening to this way after what's that going to be, March 11th to 2026, you can check the website and see if we have any directions for like kind of catching up on things. At the moment, we don't, right? If you miss them, well, c'est la vie. That's life, right? And then finally, one more quick note before we finish up. In May, right, May 11th through the 25th, we'll be taking our next Japan immersion trip. There is a reason I stopped calling these things Japan training trips, right? Because there's a lot more to them, right? Yes, we will be training, we will be studying, but we will also be reconnecting with the roots of the art in Japan. And that is not poetic. That is not like we're going to Notoshi and we're going to be training. No. Okay. We will be in Kyoto. We'll be in, where the hell are we going? Kamakura. Yeah, we will be going to a castle. We're going to a bunch of temples and whatnot that are all historically connected to what we do. We will be on Togakushi Mountain, Togakure, for those of you who remember the historical name, where the myth of Togakure for that lineage comes from. I will be taking people to a spot. The dojo is no longer there, but hundreds of years ago, a dojo stood where Daisuke Nishina, who became Daisuke Togakure, the acknowledged founder of the Togakure school, trained when he was a student just like you, right? So I understand the taijutsu is important, but you know what? So's the other stuff, especially if we're looking to live and think and understand this stuff that's been passed down, right? So again, these trips are always valuable because they give us the opportunity to step outside of our normal environment and gain new perspective on the training. Okay? And then shortly after we return, right? What's spring camp, James? At the 12th through the 14th of June, I think, just before summer slips in. We're going to be holding our spring Nijitsu camp, our training camp. It's just over a weekend. And normally I have a theme that I start putting out early. The theme for this spring camp is Japan Recap. Okay. And so what we will be doing is sharing lessons learned during that trip. Okay. So if you can't make it on the trip, I understand. If you want to see what we learned, that'd be the place to do it, right? So again, I'll be sharing some of the insights, lessons, training ideas that come out of the Japan experience, right? So if you're interested in continuing your training at a deeper level, if you want information on the Japan trip, I still have some spots available. There's only 8, and 3 of them are confirmed taken at the moment. I'm waiting to hear from number 4. But either way, there's still a couple of spots left, and you can find that at onlineninjaacademy.com/Japan-trip. Okay. And I will have information up for registering for the upcoming spring camp here in the next couple of days. Okay. So with that, any other questions or comments, James? Anybody?
No, no, sir.
Okay. In that case, thank you again for spending some time with James and I, right, during this episode of KUDEN Radio. Until next time, keep training, keep observing, and keep developing the mindset that allows you to navigate whatever reality brings. All right. With that, I'll talk to you next time on KUDEN.
Get more of KUDEN Radio, subscribe through your favorite podcasting site, or join our clan of serious modern warriors at onlineninjaacademy.com.